that all right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
What night are you supposed to stay up for? The night of Sunday night?
Sunday night, yeah. Hello, Fred.
Hi. Good morning. How are you, Rabbi
I'm
Jim?
good. I'm good. I'm good.
You're
Thank you
well.
very much for yesterday. I
Oh,
appreciate it.
you're welcome. You're very welcome. And Carol is joining us. It's great. All right. So today I want to discuss I do want to discuss the various texts that I brought. I brought those texts to everybody at CCB, and I brought them yesterday to. I brought them yesterday to Fred down in um, find them now. Okay, as I'll just find them on the computer, I guess. Um, Although I've been locked out of my anyway, so um, and then the other thing that I want to do today is begin to discuss. We are about a month, a little bit more than a month out from the service, so I want to discuss some of the logistics. Let you know some of the stuff that's happening um, uh, with HRC. I mean, with Hebrews in Your Life, and also with um, and with and think about this. Think about some stuff regarding Hillel, and then also let you know that there's a few other things in the works, and we don't have a lot of weeks left, so which is kind of exciting, and it's also a little bit like so
More of that.
yeah, exactly. So so I'm afraid that if we get started with all the logistical stuff kind of conversations that we won't talk anything about Torah. So let me grab those books, and then we can review. We can just go through. So we talked a bit last week already about these. So now I hope that you've had a chance to look at them. And I would love to get just to sort of have people share their reactions of these of the various pieces. And there's another piece. I need to go and buy the book, but once I do that, I'll be able to Xerox it and send it around to you. That is from a book published by the Reform Movement called The Woman's Torah Commentary, which I'm excited to get to you. And it'll be a little piece, again, similar to these pieces in terms of trying to come up with a definition of Torah, but slightly more up to date, so to speak. All right, so maybe just let me have some reactions to what you read, and we can discuss a little bit, and we'll take it from there. So, do I have a volunteer who wants to start, or should I just start picking on people? If you haven't read it, it's just fine, but just
You're talking about the 3 pieces that you sent?
Yeah, the 3 pieces, exactly.
I didn't read them. I forgot.
That's okay, Ellen. We'll look at the. What we'll do is we'll look at the Kushner piece together, and that way, because that's the piece I think that we can sort of most easily read without having people look at it before.
Rabbi, is this the Kushner who said when bad things happen to good people?
Different Kushner. There's lots of Kushners, but these are.
This was the guy, the rabbi at Bethel, right, in Sudbury?
Right. So this is Lawrence Kushner, who is a Reform rabbi, and and as Lori said, was the rabbi at Bethel in Sudbury for many years before moving. He's now in the Bay Area. and his daughter is also a rabbi, by the way. And then the Harold Kushner was the when bad things happen to good people guy. He is a conservative rabbi, and he was the rabbi in, I want to say, Natick for many years. And he now lives at Orchard Cove down in Canton. So those they're two local guys. All right. So it sounds like there's not a lot of specific reactions to this, which is fine. I think what I'll do is just very, very quickly saw it here for a second. I think we kind of covered, actually, I believe, the okay. Yes. So that's funny. I thought that I had put. I think that all three of these sections were together. I thought in the handouts. Did everyone get? Everyone that I.
Rabbi Jim, I found two handouts in my cubby yesterday. One is Milton Steinberg, Basic Judaism, and one is Brachot for various occasions.
Hi.
Yeah.
I don't have the.
Carol, sorry. Yes, so that one that starts with Milton Steinberg also has Arthur Green and Lawrence Kushner, just in the later pages.
Reference Milton Steinberg's As a Driven Leaf or his other book?
This is from a different book. This is from Basic Judaism.
I read that one too a long time ago.
Basic Judaism?
That's what it's called, I think.
Basic Judaism. Yeah. Hi, Helen. All right. So basically, the main thing that I wanted to read from I wanted you to get from the green, right, is this. We talked last week, right, about how Milton Steinberg and people of his generation, right, would make a very, very clear divide between traditionalists and modernists, right? And by the time we get to Kushner and Green, right, that bright line is not so clear.
That's right.
Right? Modernists and traditionalists are kind of these days it's more, obviously I'm not saying there are no traditionalists. I'm not saying there are no modernists, but what I'm saying is that the vast majority of people who take Torah seriously they have both of those perspectives together, right? And they're not going to reject a traditionalist reading because God forbid it's traditionalist, and they're not going to reject a modernist reading because God forbid it's modernist, right? The main thing, right, that Art says, right, is that literalism is not privileged over other forms of reading. And so, and I think what's important about Art, right, is on page 71 of.
Wait, I thought we were on Kushner. Wait a minute.
Oh no, we're in Green.
Oh, I've missed it.
He says mystical and Hasidic Judaism tend to emphasize the notion of continuing revelation, right? And this, I think, is very, very important, right? And it's one of the ways that the Reform movement really embraced Hasidism starting in the 60s, but increasingly over the years, right? Which is this notion that we don't need to focus on the age-old question, which is very often asked in worship and study conversations. Well, who wrote this, right? Who wrote the Bible, right? That's not really the question, right? The question is more, who's reading the Bible? It's not an uninteresting question about who wrote it and what was the context and so on and so forth, right? But the Torah is really about continuing revelation, meaning that we are for every time we reread the Torah, right? Every time we have a Torah discussion, we are renewing revelation. We're re-engaging revelation. Go ahead.
And he's using Revelation as distinct from prophecy?
Absolutely. So what he says here, right? Sinai was not just a one historical experience, but is one that can be renewed at any time for the person who is properly attuned to hearing. Every day a voice goes forth from Mount Horeb saying, "Return, O humans." All right. So and so this is the reason why Jews are so text-based, because right, where are we gonna find this revelation? We're going to find it in our sacred texts. All right. So that I think is enough from Art for right now. And now, so let's look at Kushner.
Press YouTube.
Hi, Judy. All right, let's see if I can find this thing in here. Here we go. Okay, so page 123. All right, so one of the things I like about Kushner's book, right, is he usually includes in all of these little definitions of words, he includes some scripture, right? And very interesting, right? So we had Milton Steinberg, right, who says that Torah derives from a word that means instruction, right? He's not wrong. I mean, that is fairly well attested, right? The word means instruction. Oh, we lost Judy. Okay. And Art Green, right, says that no, not no, but he adds this idea of hitting the mark, right? It's about trying to aim your life correctly, right? And then Lawrence Kushner comes and says, well, Torah actually means the way. Right. Now, usually when we see the way or something like this in Judaism, we think of halacha, right? Of Jewish law, right? Is really the path, the Jewish path, right? But Lawrence Kushner likes to be provocative, right? So now he's going to say it's the way. All right. So he includes for this one 2 different verses. So do I have a volunteer to read the verse from Exodus? Go ahead, Helen.
All the people, that part?
Yep.
Okay. All the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the blare of the shofar, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they fell back and stood at a distance. You speak to us, they said to Moses, and we will obey. But let not God speak to us, lest we die.
Okay. So what are the elements of this verse that you think pushed Kushner to put it here?
Be interceding,
So
having somebody intercede on their behalf.
So there's some sort of person, right, between God and right, some vehicle for that language, right? Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, thank you. Anything else that you notice about this verse? Okay.
The recognition of Moses as leader. We will obey.
Right.
Mhm.
That's great. All right. So, I mean, what I would say, right, is how freaky this is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is really scary. Right?
Right.
This is really scary. Right? And, so which, I mean, I think is one of those things that we sometimes forget. Sandy, you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to know, why do you think it's scary?
Oh, because there's thunder and lightning and smoke, and the people are freaked out, and they say, Moses, you go talk to God. This is too much for us, right? So, and I think when we talk about Torah,
And they've also been slaves.
okay, so
So they have a slave mentality
of obeying
Okay, that's very,
and following direction.
that's right. That's very interesting. And right at the same time, this is one of the big sort of conflicts in the story of the Torah, right? Is that on one hand they have a kind of a slave mentality, which but they're not very good at being slaves, right? Right, and they're also not very good at obeying God once they stop being slaves, right? So there's this really interesting back and forth, right?
Yeah, the balance.
And what I love about the notion, right, that there has to be a go-between, right, is that what God is saying, right, is beyond, for people, for the vast majority of people, for basically everybody but Moses, right? Torah is thunder, lightning, shofar blasts, and smoke, right? It's nothing that they can understand, right? So what do they need in order to have access to it, right? And to make it a little bit less scary,
A
right?
translator.
They need it in translation, right? Not translation of Hebrew into English, right? But translation from whatever that thing is that is God's communication, right, into human language, right, into human language. And so, and so, that it because you've just come up with, Heva, something I hadn't really thought of before, right? It is another sort of understanding of why the textual tradition is so important in Judaism, right? That we are all about trying, right, to understand the way of God in human language, right?
Yeah.
Because we know, and Art actually makes reference to this, right? Art says, what is the perfect teaching of Yud He Vav He, right? We can't get access to it because we are limited human beings, right? But that's what we're doing whenever we study Torah. We're trying to translate this unutterable thing into language that we can make sense of.
Well, we're also learning to think for ourselves
Yes.
and to stand up for our opinions. Okay. So if you are recently released from slavery, you haven't developed this mindset of being able to express yourself without some sort of punishment.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't want to. I mean, I don't want to push that
Yeah.
about slave.
No.
Too much, right? Because I think that one of the realities, right, is that we are in the place of the Israelites all the time, right? This is if we lean too much on they were just released from slavery narrative, right? We're distancing ourselves from the Israelites, and that is really, I'm going to give the game away, right? I think that's among the reasons why Kushner brings this second text, right? So Lori, you have the dog, so I'm not going to have you do that.
No, I'm good.
Great.
Good.
I make this covenant. What does it say there?
I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, but both with those who are standing here with us today before the Lord our God, and with those who are not with us here this day.
Right. So we're all the Israelites. We're always emerging from some narrow place, from some place where we're not fully ourselves. Right?
Well,
A form of slavery.
It's right.
Yeah.
And
so we still have that slave. I mean, how many people, have addictions? How many people have,
right.
I mean,
it's not only that, but the mentality, and so also something, maybe you're going to get to this, Jim, on the next page that Kushner talks about, the way is a source of learning about yourself, but you have to learn how to drown out other noises.
Yes.
It's like an early form of mindfulness.
Yes, so let's get there, right? I mean, one thing that one of the ways in which becoming Jewish for me was this incredible gift is that it has given me access to accept and understand and access other traditions as well. And so I now have much more capacity to understand where Christians are coming from, or where Buddhists are coming from, or where Muslims are coming from, which I didn't have when I was sort of a rebellious, non-Christian or whatever it was that I was.
I would love to hear that expounded upon sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I add a comment?
Please.
Yeah. Oh, I was just thinking in rereading the Exodus part that, you have the thunder, the lightning, the shofar, the mountain smoking. And for them, these are all big things, but we too have things we don't understand, like pandemic, like a volcano, like a hurricane, etc. Right. So I think in that sense, we are, as you said, in their position all the time.
Nora.
Absolutely. Right. We collectively, both in this country and in the world, have been in Mitzrayim and are still there, right? We're, maybe we're on the way to the Red Sea, but Pharaoh isn't really letting us go.
No.
Right? And then as Americans, right, we're in this other sort of terrible place, right, of Pharaoh hardening Pharaoh's heart, or somebody hardening Pharaoh's heart with the sort of the seemingly permanent disinformation.
Mm-hmm.
That people just live in this alternative reality, right? And so there's a lot, and how do we make sense of this? What do we do now? What is the way forward from this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it would be great, right, if we could say, Moses, tell us, you talk to God, you figure out what he's trying to tell us, and then you tell us what to do, right?
Right.
And
Moses wasn't always right.
I'm sorry?
Moses was not always right. That's why he didn't get to the promised land.
Well, I mean, I agree with you on the first part. On the second part, I'm not. Who knows? Yeah. I'm going to take the fifth on that second part of that statement. But I would agree with you completely on the first part, right? And I think it's very important that the Torah, right, as a document, makes it clear that Moses is fallible, right? It's crucial, right? Because it's a really hard job.
Yeah.
To translate for God, right? And I think the other piece of it, right, is where do we go? How do we make sense of this pandemic, right? What do we do? We go to our texts, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's many places we can go, right? But one place we could go is the texts about plagues. About plagues in the Torah, about plagues in Jewish history, about how in the Talmud, what do you do when there's a plague, right? How do we make sense of this, right? And we have a whole tradition about it. I haven't done that work, but it's there, right? What do we do about political, threatened political tyranny, right? Where do we go? We have a lot of different traditions about that.
And I think that's another place where Kushner's text becomes important. You have to, especially today in our 24/7 news cycle, you have to be able to blot out the extraneous noise.
Right.
You have to be able to shut off the television, unplug,
right,
and think, read the text.
Right. So I was listening to this Buddhist thing the other day, and it was a Dharma talk that was given right after the 2012 election. And it was actually interesting to listen to this, because like many of the sort of societal ills that this guy was talking about haven't changed. You know, too many prisons, not enough schools, racism, police violence, you know, the whole, all this, and there was no Donald Trump yet, right? There wasn't even Black Lives Matter yet, I don't think. And he then at some point a little bit later in the program, he says, you know, sometimes the most politically radical thing you can do, right, is to turn off the news and read a poem. Right. And I think it's very, Laura, you're absolutely right. It's so easy to forget that, right? It's so easy to forget that studying Torah, right, is a radically, what's the word I'm looking for? Subversive act, right? We're looking into our ancient books, right, for the ongoing revelation. And what I find so amazing is that the Torah itself, by the time it gets to Deuteronomy, understands itself that way, right? It's not just you folks sitting here at Sinai, right? Wherever Sinai is, right? Or Horeb, probably, I think it's thinking Deuteronomy, it's Horeb, right? It's not just you guys, it's all the generations that come after you. Right? That's, you know, they're here too, right? And that is among the sources of the tradition, right? That every Jew, right, the soul of every Jew that ever was and ever will be was present at Sinai, including the souls of people who come to Judaism from other traditions. Right? So it's a very powerful understanding of Torah, right? And it's not some sort of radical mystical thing that Art Green came up with in 1999 or whenever Art came up with what he came up with, right? It's not even a radical Hasidic thing, really, that, you know, the Hasids, you know, the founders of the Hasidic movement in the 18th century came up with, right? It's something that the Torah itself posits. All right, so let's look now in the piece. Okay, so the way is not a book or a scroll. Right? We've already discussed, right, how Torah is both the scroll and not the scroll.
What I find interesting too is the way is one of the ways of explaining the Tao.
Yeah.
I've been a student of religions my entire life.
Right.
And the Tao references it the way.
Right.
And in fact, if you remove the word and replace it with Torah or God, both are almost interchangeable.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's so much resonance among our traditions, right? There's so much to learn about Judaism from Buddhism, and I would imagine that there's so much to learn about Buddhism from Judaism, right?
Yes.
Right.
And from what I understand, even the Dalai Lama approached one of our rabbis from the renewal movement, which was Rabbi Zellman,
right, on
how Jews remain Jews,
right,
in the diaspora,
right,
because they are in a diaspora.
It's something that Jews, we almost take it for granted now, right? That Jews will survive in the diaspora because we've been doing it for such a long time. And anyway, everybody is a diaspora Jew at this point, despite what some Israelis might tell you, right? We're all in Galut, right?
Yes.
Living in Israel doesn't
remove
Galut from your consciousness unless you're very good at putting blinders on, right? And so yes, it's what we do, is living in
Excuse
diaspora.
me, can I just say there's a very good book on the Jew and the lotus?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
right. Yeah, Roger Kamenetz, I think, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you for remembering his name. I did not. I think he was a poet, so
He was
written.
a poet, yeah. And our own local Reb Moshe was part of that
Yes,
delegation.
Rabbi Moshe Waldotz did that trek.
Yeah. All right. And since it is perfect, right? The way is a perfect description of all being. And since it is perfect, the way is also the same as all being. Right. So this is this mystical notion from Kabbalah and then into Hasidism, right? That the Torah is all, right? And that the Torah is sort of the blueprint of all. And when God came to make the world, what did God do? He looked into the Torah to see what he had to do. Right? So it's actually not a description, right? So if any right-wing Christian tells you, oh, the Bible describes exactly what God did to make the world, you can say, no, you fool. God didn't make the world. God didn't make the world the way the Torah says. God used the Torah as a blueprint to make
The original YouTube video.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. All right. So because the way comes from the source of all being, trying to understand the way constitutes the highest activity of mind, just as living in accordance with it is the highest expression of right behavior. In the words of the proverb, she is a tree of life to those who hold fast to her. Right. So this is why, in a sense, right, and so I want to revise just a tiny little bit, right, that we are all Jews coming out, we are all Israelites coming out of Mitzrayim, and we go up to Moshe and we say, Moshe, you talk to God, right? The problem is, right, that we run up to Moshe and we say, you talk to God, and Moses looks at us and Moses is us, right? We're the one who has to do it, right? We're the one who has to figure this stuff out, right? Each for themselves, right? And this is one of the reasons it's so scary, right? What is truly the right way for me to live? What is truly, how can I truly understand who I am, how I fit into the world, and how I should behave and what I should do with my life, right? So the Torah comes, right, to give us the way to understand the answers to those questions. All right, so here he says explicitly what I was just talking about. The way is the master code for all creation, the infrastructure of being. So we should add this to the Democrats' definition of infrastructure, along with childcare and health insurance and all that other stuff, right?
Bridges that don't kill people.
Bridges that don't kill people. I would like those. You were talking. Kent was, before you got on, Ellen. Kent was talking about the trip she recently took down to Washington D.C. and the number of terrifying bridges she needed to cross. So in an the blueprint for the world and the source of each person's self. So in an important sense, to learn about the way is also to learn about yourself, but you must listen with great care and remove all distracting noise, right? So we were talking about that already before, right? And I think what's also important to some of the noise that's really important to remove, right, is we were talking a bit about this last week, right? About worrying about whether we're doing it right, right? Yes. Or worrying about, do we really count as a Jew? Does Rabbi Jim considers me Jewish, but would random Shloimi or some random Rabbi Shloimi over there, the black hat, is he going to consider? Who cares if Rabbi Shloimi considers you a Jew, right? Doesn't matter. It really, what matters, right? Really, what matters is, how, not even do you consider yourself a Jew, but how do you consider yourself a Jew? Right? What's the way that you are meant to be Jewish in the world, right? Because as we discussed,
That's a great phrase.
Read it back. Say it back to me. Is the way how you understood it.
How you see yourself as a Jew in the world.
Yeah.
Right. That is really the question, right? And this gets to sort of also the notion, right, that the Torah is not just, right, the blueprint. And this is why I think, Heve, it's so important to remember, right, as you just pointed out, right, it's also Tao, it's also Dharma, right? It's also Quran, right? Is that it's like it comes in so many different forms, right? This just happens to be the way we're doing, right? And
Because it resonates with our soul.
right, exactly. But but it's even more than that, right? Because as we were discussing, I forget the venue where we were discussing this. It's not, I think it was on Wednesday we were talking about Talmud. There's no way for every Jew to do every mitzvah, right? We all have the mitzvahs we can do, right? And in a strictly traditional understanding of that, that means, well, I'm a Kohen, or I'm an Israel, or I'm a Levi, or I'm a woman, or I'm a man, right? Or I'm Sephardi, or I'm Ashkenazi, or whatever it is, right? But let's get real, right? It's also what's the Torah that we follow? What's the Torah that we follow? What's the Torah that allows us to be who we truly are?
This may be a real detour. I suggest for everybody that they read a book I never in my life thought I would read. It's called 10 Rungs, Hasidic Sayings of Martin Buller. I can't remember. Because they are so funny, some of them, and they are so interesting. And I've never read anything quite like that.
Great.
It may not be useful, but I find it a great mind cleaner.
I mean, each person, right? Each person has to find. I mean, this is the deal, right? Some people are going to find Buber really, really great. Other people are going to be like, this Buber, he makes me really angry. I'm going to throw his book across the room, right? I mean, like, it's, that's just, you're going to find, along with finding, where is, what's in the Torah for you, right? Is also a matter of finding, who's going to be your teacher, who's going to be your rabbi.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really, and the rabbi could be, an actual person who's talking to you, or a rabbi can be, some long dead rabbi who speaks in a book. Right. So very often the rabbis of old, we didn't call them by their names, right? We called them by their books. All right. So any other noise will drown it out. Right. And this is where Lori was getting to this business about mindfulness, which I think is really very important, right? Giving yourself room and time to study for it, right?
That's hard.
Very hard. Right. In our day and age, like sometimes we need to have a therapist in order to give ourselves room to sort of explore what's in our souls, right? We didn't have that hour of therapy, would we do it? Maybe not, right? And this is how I, again, like, and so studying Torah, well, what does that mean? Does it mean you've got to find a Hebruta and have a time that you set aside to learn texts with, right? Does it mean that you come to shul and give yourself that time not to be distracted by the fact that someone again unmuted themselves at the wrong time, or whatever it is, but really allow yourself to sink into the liturgy and try to figure out what it's trying to tell you, not what the liturgy is trying to say, but what the liturgy is there to say to you, right? You go ahead.
I attend services every morning.
Yeah.
At 8 o'clock through Zoom, and it's a real challenge to really focus in. It's only half an hour.
Yeah.
It's only a few minutes, but to focus in on being present,
Right.
because my mind will wander. Okay, what do I have? I mean, it's 8 o'clock. What do I have to do today? What, what's on my calendar? All sorts of little, and I'm not talking about a physical phone or iPad or anything, just the thought process.
Right. Anyone who has tried to meditate, right,
Yeah.
will know, right, that as soon as you say, I'm going to sit down and meditate, everything comes right at that moment. Everything that you were supposed to do and you couldn't remember a minute ago, now that you're trying to meditate, your whole to-do list shows up. What the heck is that about? Right?
Yes.
And so it's among the reasons, right, why we don't allow ourselves to do this, right? Whether it's meditation or Torah study or prayer, whatever it is, right? We don't allow ourselves to do this because as soon as we do, we get completely overwhelmed.
Yes.
Well, I think, that's part, for me, that's part of the strength and the appeal of Judaism. I've never been anything other than Jewish, so
Right.
I'm speaking in a limited sense, but there's a dichotomy. I have a rather from Choser B'Tuvah cousin, who there is only one way. There is only one rabbi to follow. And I'm sorry, but you're wrong.
Right.
And besides, you're a woman. And then, so a lot of the engagement and the filtering out of noise is finding a community, defined however you want, that allows you to approach religion, study, whatever you want to use, other than the word spirituality, because I don't think anybody can dictate that to you, the way you want and not tell you you're wrong.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, right, because the true, truly the Torah is inside you. And so it's a matter of, so this, to continue this along, right? Any other noise will drown it out, right? So anyone that tells you you're wrong is drowning out what you might be able to hear, right? This was the very same whisper Elijah the prophet heard when he stood on the place where Moses stood and heard the thin, barely audible sound of almost breathing, right? And this is one of the reasons why, people like Kushner and Art Green, talk about this business of the breath, right? Not just because they understand that lots of us now are Jubus, right? But because
What is a Jubu?
a Jewish, a Jew who practices Buddhism.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Like half of TBZ are Jubus.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, they have the whole Jewish meditation thing at TBZ.
Yeah, I did read about that, but I didn't know they were referred to as.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a little bit of a jokey kind of a thing.
Oh, okay.
People who incorporate Buddhist practice, Jubus run the range from Jewish people who consider themselves no longer Jewish because they're Buddhists now,
Right.
to people who consider themselves completely Jewish, but they do Buddhist style, practices like meditation.
I'm a little puzzled because if we are to think of being Jewish is what kind of Jew we are, and we have to. I'm trying to say something that obviously I can't about not about what Judaism is, but what it is to you. And when I hear that, I hear the wicked son.
To a certain extent, yeah, right. That the wicked son or the selfish son or the whatever, right?
Yeah.
That I think that the rabbis are putting that in there because so many of us need to be that, right? So many of us are not going to be satisfied with Lori's cousin's version of Judaism, This is right. That is wrong. There are no questions. There's no
Yeah.
more questions. There's no more discussion.
It's such a simple way of looking at things.
Right.
And for certain people, that's what's important. That's how they need to drown out the noise.
Exactly.
Well, it is simple. Someone else is making all the decisions for you.
Someone
That's
has decided what's important to you.
You
Right?
just memorize the list and
Right.
you do it.
In that way, right, in the little midrash that we're making up about the Exodus verse, right, the Israelite comes out of Egypt, gets to Sinai, hears all the thunder, runs to Moses and says, you talk to him and tell us what we're supposed to do. And Moses turns around and does that. End of story, right? Whereas the way that, I understand that verse, right, is we run up to Moses and we say, you talk to him, and we realize that we are Moses, right? It's on us. We've got to do that. That's the the evil son, so to speak, right? Is that we realize that we can't rely on someone else just to tell us all the rules. Right? It's not going to work for us. We're not going to find God that way. We're not going to.
Maybe you or I may not find God that way.
That's
but the person, right? But the person, like,
well, that's completely what I'm saying. I mean,
right.
for Bog s nimi, as we say in Russian, like God be with them. If they want to find God in that sort of very black and white world, fine. I'm not saying that's not. I'm not saying that's not legitimate for people for whom that's meaningful. It's just that it doesn't work at all for me, and so I'm not interested.
Kind of like the Catholic and Protestant versions of things, needing someone to intercede and
Absolutely.
doing it for yourself.
Right. And just to make it clear, right, that no tradition, has cornered the market on black and white understandings of religious faith and behavior, right? Every tradition has this. Every tradition has these people who want to offload it to Moses. Moses, you do it, right?
Irresponsible.
Right. The Buddhists have it. The Christians have it. The Christians of all stripes have it, right? And the Jews have it. We're not, in that regard, the Jews are no different than anyone else. All right. So, but the breathing, right? The breathing is because God's name, Yod He Vav He, right, doesn't sound like anything. Right? That's our breath. So God is in our breathing. What God gave us, breath, right? In Genesis, right? God breathes into the Adam, into the first person, right? And we breathe God, right, until the end of our lives, when our breath leaves us and we turn back into the earth. Right? And so at the most fundamental, right? We've got to drown out all that noise so we can hear ourselves breathing, right? And that's our Torah at some level. So this quiet sound and the sustained silent attention that renders it audible and intelligible places demands on human behavior, right? We have to find time to let this happen, right? We have to make sure that we allow other people. You might mention this to your cousin at some point, Lori, although probably won't want to because it'll just cause trouble, right? We've got to leave room for other people to hear what's going on with them, right? We can't drown out other. You're muted, Lori. I'm sorry.
I said, no, because the Rebbe said.
Which Rebbe does he follow?
He's become Chabad.
To ignore these demands is more than abdicating into existential responsibility. It constitutes sin. Right? So for Kushner, right, if we're not paying attention to ourselves, right, if we're not learning about ourselves, and I would say as a Jew, right, what the tool we have Torah, right? If you're and I don't mean a Jew like you were born of into a Jewish family and thus I mean people who are actively engaged in the tradition, right? People who are actively actively identify themselves as Jews who struggle with Torah. I mean, you know, if you're someone who happened to be born Jewish, but you're really a Freudian, then, you know, go learn yourself through Freud.
That was Mr. Dr. Freud. He tried.
Yeah. You know, and if you, so if you want to be a Jungian, okay, fine, you're a Jungian, that's great. I mean, all I'm saying is that it's, you know, I don't think Kushner here is saying that Torah is the only way, right? But this is a way of understanding our tradition, understanding how we can live. All right. So I'm not going to read the Sholem. You can read that for yourself, right? And I would like to invite you, if you're at CCB, I'd like to invite you to do this. Is for you to, and we'll figure this out. Actually, maybe we can do this next week at 15:50. I wasn't going to bring a Torah scroll this week to Goldman for the service because we're going to read from the Humash, but you know, we can. I would be very happy to allow people to do what Larry Kushner here suggests. Right, is that you go into a room with the Torah and you just sit with it. Right, you just sit with the Torah. You don't have to open it. Whatever, we can if you're interested, right? We can show you. But just I've never thought to do this, but I will say that you know, there was something really powerful about having the Torah among us again, the Torah, I mean, you know, with us again in a way that it hadn't been for an entire year.
One of the beautiful ways that Kushner himself dealt with this when he was the rabbi at Bethel was on Simchat Torah. Everyone stood around the room the way you used to do upstairs.
Yeah.
But he unrolled the entire thing and everybody in the room had their hands on it.
Right.
It really was theirs.
Right. That's just such a lovely, and they do that at TBC. They do that
was
at TBC.
surprisingly powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
We always did that at Simchat Torah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Over again.
It is remarkable how the symbolic power of the Torah scroll really abides in the scroll, right? In the physical, what's the word I'm looking for? The physical.
The word made manifest.
Right. I mean, it's actually there, right? Christians call scripture, they call it the word, right? Because of John, right? That the word became flesh, right? So, but you know, that it's true, right? For us, words are really, really important, but not just words in the abstract, but words on the scroll, right?
And there is something, even if you don't really read Hebrew, if you have an aliyah and you're looking over the shoulder of whoever's reading, you go, oh, wait, I know those letters.
Right, exactly.
I know them.
Right. You're part of it. It's part of you, right?
I just want to tell the other people here that on Passover, when you and Susan and other people put together the scrolls and you took the whole apparatus, because I don't know the words for it, and you all were so happy all the time you did that work, and I've never heard anything like that. And it was Rabbi Jim, and nobody knew I was listening on the phone. And so I heard it all, and they were in heaven on earth doing that work. And it was beautiful to listen to.
It really did feel in this incredibly powerful way, right? That we were, you know, coming out of Egypt. I mean, it was really that immediate.
Yeah.
So we'll see how we do on Shavuot, and if we actually feel like we're getting the Torah, it doesn't still work. Every time we worry. All right, so I'm going to switch gears just for, we only have 5 minutes. So, all right, so in the next couple of weeks, what we're hoping to do is to spend, I would like to spend one of our weeks on rabbinic literature, teaching a few Talmudic texts and giving you a sense of, of that, right? Then Rachel is arranging with Mayim Chaim to give us a virtual tour of the mikveh, and I'm hoping that it will be possible for those who are interested. I can't promise this because there's all kinds of logistical hurdles, but if people are interested in immersing before the bat mitzvah, I would love to arrange for that to be a possibility for people who would find that meaningful.
I would find it meaningful.
Immersing before a big transition in your life is a traditional thing to do, right? Of course, mikveh, we haven't really talked about it, but mikveh is a very important part traditionally of a woman's experience of Judaism. Yeah. And it's connected, significantly with fertility, right, and motherhood, and and a woman's cycle, and all of this, incredibly beautiful, these incredibly beautiful aspects of being a woman. And so, I think it's important, since most of us are women, that we include that in our
wonderful.
You're not going to the mikvah?
Yeah.
Learning about the mikveh at the very least.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's that one next to 95, 128 in like Newton Wellesley line, Mayim or something.
That's the only one we would go to.
Okay.
That's the liberal mikveh. And
Is it going to be virtual?
The tour will be virtual. The immersion, if you're interested, you can't really do a virtual immersion. So if you want to immerse, we'll have to figure out the logistics of that.
I have a vehicle.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
So, and
that's one of the questions that I have.
I have an SUV.
Great. So that's one of the questions I have for the administration. If it's quote unquote official CCB stuff, there's one set of questions. If I just say, oh, the mikveh is ready to have you, then Heather, you can go with whomever you want.
Right.
So let's just sort of put that aside for a second. I'm hoping that Rachel also will be willing to do an hour on Jewish feminism for this group because that's, for many of us of my generation and younger, feminism is not a question, right? It just is. It's part of the foundation of our Jewish understanding and Jewish practice. But that's not to say that we should take it for granted. So I think having an hour devoted to that topic would be really helpful. And she's been learning about it recently, so she's probably more able than I am to sort of put together an hour about that. You got to go, Ann. Great, thank you.
Bye.
All right.
I have a really quick mikvah story. On my first trip to Israel, I was in Tzfat on a Friday afternoon. And there's this parade, that's the only way to describe it, of men in black hats and black coats carrying Adidas gym bags to go off to the mikveh.
Yep. Yeah, got to go to mikveh before Shabbos. Exactly.
But the modern and the not so modern.
Exactly. Although again, as we said from the beginning, right? It's the modern and the timeless, right?
Okay, that's much better.
And so the other thing, and not everyone is here, but I did want to sort of discuss a couple of issues. There's a couple of questions that I have for everybody in terms of, and then we'll turn to Hebrew if people want to. There's a couple of questions I have for people in regards to media, and in terms of the actual day. of the celebration. And so the first, HSL, you may have noticed if you were, if you remember, earlier in the pandemic, my colleague Rabbi Lior ran a bat mitzvah program for Jack Satterhouse, and it happened right in the midst of the lockdown and the pandemic, and it was this amazing moment of joy in the midst of all this suffering and death, and it went viral, and so it got onto like the television and like all across the country.
Wow.
I don't think right at this point we're going to get that level of attention, but HSL does want to use.
I don't want that level of attention.
No.
Me neither.
I worried about it anyway because it was basically just Rabbi Lior talking about it, and then whatever sort of canned pictures they had of it.
Oh, okay.
But what I would love to get from everyone, and I'll send a note about this as well, is if you're a CCB resident, if you could send me, or a HSL resident, because Fred, this is also relevant to you. Actually, Fred, you don't have to worry about it because I already know that you lived in Sharon and you're a fireman. But first of all, where are you now, right? And where did you come from before moving to Hebrew Senior Life? And then and are you willing to have your image used in any kind of media? And you can say no, don't worry about it if you don't want to.
Do we have to do that?
Nope, not at all. If you don't want to, it's not a requirement. It's just that people that for instance, like that very often this will be local media. It will not be won't be the Globe or television or whatever, or
Front page of the Washington Post?
Maybe the Washington Post. I'll talk to Sudeep and maybe he can get me the name of his editor there. But like the Brookline Tab will probably want to run something, right? About, so I'll talk to them because I'm the Brookline rabbi, right? The Brighton, the Brighton Patch might want to put something on their website because this rabbi who lives in Brighton is doing this bar mitzvah thing, blah, blah, blah. The Cambridge, might want to would like to know. It's it's a nice story.
It's a feel-good story.
Feel-good story in the pandemic, exactly. You're uncomfortable. The Winthrop paper might like to have a picture. Oh my gosh, this woman Kent is doing this. Finally getting her bat mitzvah. Blah blah blah. So
yeah, I don't know, because I was very involved in the one main synagogue here that used to be vibrant, but is now quite small.
Yeah.
But they're mostly extremely right-wing Republicans, and I was a little bit shocked because I'm used to going to Hillel.
Right.
So I love them dearly, but I don't think they're really going to care that I'm getting my bat mitzvah with you guys.
But again, it's not so much the the other Jews. It's more just the people in the town.
Yeah.
So
But you don't have to do it.
So when they see you in the supermarket, Kent,
I'm sorry?
I said, Kent, when they see you in the supermarket, they'll go, she's the one.
That's that Jew that got her bar mitzvah. So the other thing that I'd like to do.
May I please just intercede there about this? I think I told you that on August 22nd, the New England Poetry Club was having a reading of Black poets and white poets.
Yep.
And we were sacked.
Yeah. No, we're gonna have to have.
Yes.
We'll have another layer of whatever. We'll have.
If you want at some point to be in touch with the head of the president of the club, the poetry club.
I'm not that worried about security, but we'll have people who can squatch it.
Yeah. Well, it was horrible.
So I'm thinking about making a little video, primarily for us, but it would also be able to other people with some interviews of us, right? and I'm hoping that we'll be able to do a rehearsal for this. So anyone who's reading from the Torah obviously will want to do a rehearsal for it.
Yes.
So to have a chance to, and we'll probably we should do a whole scale rehearsal if we can, so that we have, so we have some hope of not just tripping over all each other when we actually get around to the actual thing.
Is it going to be there?
Yeah, right. So the ceremony will be at 100 Center Street, and people are welcome to be there in person. If you are reading the Torah or I would say the Haftarah, it would be really good to be there in person. If you don't feel comfortable being there in person, then you can certainly be on Zoom, and that's up to you.
I won't be on Zoom.
Yes,
Is
that's
it
fine, Ellen. That's
is
that's
it full
great.
masking in person still?
I'm sorry?
Is it still full masking in person?
Yeah.
Well, then there's no problem about being photographed.
Exactly. At this point, we will be masked. If that changes, yeah, I'll let you know.
So I have to, one has to practice reading with a mask on.
I think that would be a good idea. I have been reading the Torah with a mask on.
Yeah, but you're the rabbi.
True. So I think that's probably the best plan. On the other hand, if that's going to create an issue for people, then we'll figure something out. We'll make it. We can make accommodations.
Depends if I'm hyperventilating,
If you start hyperventilating, we'll take the mask off.
We've become a society of screamers.
Just us.
So right, so it'll be the people who will be in person are the participants,
Okay.
staff, and residents of CCB. The only person at this point where I'm contemplating allowing a guest, so to speak, is Fred, because he is coming from Randolph. So I think Fred was talking yesterday about his daughter driving him up. So his daughter. But everyone else, I would ask you to not bring guests.
So no immediate family.
What?
No immediate family, no partners.
At this point, no. I've been told no immediate family. And again, if that changes, I would love to be able to offer people the opportunity to bring one person. But at this point, administration is not comfortable with that.
Okay.
And
I'm going to be on Zoom.
That's great, Ellen. And if
yeah, I think that's great.
As we learn who's going to be on Zoom, maybe that will open up more slots. We'll sort of we'll adjust as it comes. I would love for Stephen to be there, if we can make that happen. So we'll sort of figure that out as it comes, and people can let me know, are they planning to be there in person or on Zoom?
Because frankly, I'm not from CCB. I mean, I'm coming from the outside.
Right.
From precisely the same outside that he's coming from.
This is not an outside versus inside.
I get it. I get it.
Issue. Yeah, it's just the numbers. And so yeah, we'll just have to figure it out. And it's difficult. It's difficult because this is all uncharted waters for us.
I hear you.
And so now traditionally what would happen is that at a bar bat mitzvah, a person would take an aliyah, right? So I'm assuming that the people who are reading from the Torah scroll will take an aliyah.
Rachel already gave me my aliyah.
Right, exactly. But no, what I'm saying is that you would say the blessings before and after the reading.
Right.
So anyone else who would like an aliyah, as long as you're going to be at the service, right? So Ellen, you're going to be on Zoom, so you can't physically do an aliyah from your apartment, so you wouldn't do one. But anyone else who would like to do an aliyah, please let me know so that I can, so we have to figure out, are we going to spend class time on learning how to do it, or am I going to work individually with people on how to do it? That's
I didn't realize that you can't do it from a distance,
that would be very difficult to do it from a distance.
even on Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, because part of it, again, this is part of that, this is part of the physical
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Judaism. You kiss the scroll with your talus, you hold on to the, it's a chayim when you're saying
to the,
blessing. So
yeah.
not being present puts this.
In order to be present, would I be welcome at
Absolutely.
Brookline?
Yep, you would be more than welcome. It would just be a matter of figuring out the logistics of getting you there. That's, but you, as a
It's
person,
called the bus. I can take the bus.
maybe we could figure out a way to get you a ride. You know, it wouldn't be, you know, for one Shabbos, maybe we could figure out a ride for you. You don't have to,
I have to think about that.
Yeah,
Because
so think about
people who want to come would be coming on Zoom.
Right.
Yeah. Ellen, I could give you a ride.
Thanks, Ellen. You are terrific.
That would be wonderful.
I'll meet you at the hospital again.
No, I can pick you up. The Devar Torahs that I think the two of us are doing, we'll be doing them there, right? In this part of the service. I don't know how that works.
The Devar Torah is something that will be part of the service.
Okay.
And you know, how many ever Devar Torah we end up with is great.
Yeah.
And we will people will deliver them there. If someone is giving a Devar Torah who doesn't want to be in person, that can happen remotely. That's not a problem.
Okay. All right. Okay.
We'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And,
no problem.
All right. So I'll send out a note to everyone, and I'll ask everyone to get back to me with, you know, the answers to these various questions. But you know, so we're gonna, Rachel and I, once we figure out what all the various components are, we're gonna put together the liturgy. It'll be a much, you know, there'll be much less liturgy than there usually is because there's going to be so much rigmarole. So it'll be a very different thing. Finally,
but it's a very dramatic parasha.
Oh,
I mean, Korach is
yes, yes.
Oh, we get swallowed up by the earth.
Yes.
Right.
She is terrific.
Disaster porn. So finally, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. So invitations. The other question that I'm going to have is I want to make sure, so I'm going to make up an invitation that's going to list everyone that as of now is participating.
Don't put me on the invitation. I'm not participating.
That's fine. And again, that's exactly the point. So if you don't want your name on the invitation, then, you know, which is completely fine. You just have to make sure that I know that. And then but then I will get you, for people at CCB, I can get you the actual invitations. For people who are living elsewhere, we'll have to figure out, do I send them to a local Kinko's? Do I send you the file and you print them out? Like, however you want to manage it.
I could print mine out.
Great.
And, or email them to the people who might Zoom.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think there'll be some people for whom it'll be nice to be able to send their loved ones a printed out piece of paper. For other people, I think it's just going to be completely fine to put it out on
email.
Yeah, don't put me on the invitation.
I won't, Ellen. You're just fine. To send it electronically. What I'm going to do, I have to figure out how to do this, but I think I'm going to have, because we're going to put this out more broadly, I'm going to try to figure out how to make sure that have people register for it who are outside of CCB. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to happen, but we'll
You
figure it.
mean registering for the Zoom?
Yeah, right. 'Cause as opposed to putting my Zoom address on email,
Yeah.
right, to the entire world,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to I'll have a sign up sheet, and I will, and I'll send it out to the people who.
What the poetry people are now doing in different groups, that you get something that's available as you host the invite, and people have to register.
Right.
Usually the day before, when you get the message, the invite.
Still have people. Well, I'm going to have to figure this out because we still have people who come on, from worship and study and so on and so forth, who are just accustomed to clicking my Zoom.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I don't want to lock people out, so I'm.
Yeah.
So the day of the ceremony, you log on to the Zoom you use for all your services.
That's the plan, Ellen.
The one that ends Jim.
Yeah, exactly. That's the plan.
So if I want to do it on Zoom, I just log on to the regular link and I stay in my apartment, and you don't put me on the invitation.
Exactly. I will not put you on the invitation. All right. Good. And the invitation, so for the people who are at CCB, the invitation will have a link to for fundraising for CCB in your honor or whatever. We are also running this as a fundraiser for our tzedakah fund for the Minyan. So for the people in the Minyan can decide, do they want the CCB one or do they want the Minyan one? And we'll do it that way.
All right. So Rabbi Jim, you're not putting me on the invitation.
Nope. No worries, Ellen.
Does it start Saturday at 10 a.m.?
Yep.
And I just log on to the link I use for this service.
Exactly. All right. So we have 10 minutes that we can look at prayer book Hebrew. So
Shabbat Shalom.
Good Shabbos. Thank you, Lori.
And Jim, I will send you an email about photographing or somehow getting me my aliyah from the Torah.
Absolutely. And one other thing before you run away. Oh no, everyone's running away. I have this idea that, again, if you're comfortable, it's not a requirement, but if you're comfortable, if you can find a picture of yourself at 12 or 13 years old and a current picture of yourself, it would be just amazing to have a collage, not necessarily for public consumption, but just as a keepsake of the group. All of us,
There are no early pictures of me, but my professional one is at friend's house with a corgi sitting on me.
Perfect. That's amazing. Well, I mean, whatever, and maybe we wouldn't say 12 or 13. 12 or 13 is ideal, but any childhood picture.
Yeah. Well, remember, we didn't get one of you at 13 when we asked for it.
But that's just because I
yes,
the ones I found. Now, how old was I here, do you think? I wasn't 13, but what do you think, like 10?
Close. I
think it's
10, 11 close.
I think a little younger.
It's a little younger, right? 10 or 11, probably.
Yeah.
Because
Because if you were older, you wouldn't have left.
Yeah.
You
No,
wouldn't have
Ellen,
gone to.
Ellen, just remember, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do.
So if I don't want to do a picture, I don't have to?
No, you have to do. You don't have to do anything. Everything is completely voluntary.
Okay. I'm not going to be part of the Hebrew thing right now. I'll send you an email. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one question.
All right, Ellen.
Is Torah a proper noun?
Yes.
No, Torah is
no.
No, it's actually in Hebrew. It's not in English. It is.
Oh.
But it's not in Hebrew.
In English, it's the Torah, right? Although even in English, right, when we say the Torah, we're talking about the 5 books of Moses, right? When we're saying Torah, right, it is any
The Gomorrah, the,
any right,
everything.
any Jewish teaching is also Torah. So that's not really a
That's right. That's
So
right.
it's not a
Said
proper
that.
noun in
Yes.
Hebrew, but it is.
Yes.
it. So ha-Torah, right? When you say ha-Torah, the Torah, it is a proper noun, right? The Torah,
In
right?
Hebrew too?
Yeah. But when you say Torah, if it's Torah shel Moshe, right? That's the Torah of Moses, right?
Yeah.
You don't need
So
the
if it
ha
has God in front of it, it's a proper noun. If you don't, it is. It isn't.
generally, right? All
That
right.
was a good question, Ellen.
That's a very good question.
It was from page 199.
All right, let me look at page 190. Wow, you've made some progress. Page 199. Holy
Well,
smokes.
I have to go back and do things over.
Okay. I don't
It's
know.
from
199, the future.
99.
Oh, page 99. I was going to say 199. Ellen, you're like jetting through this thing.
No, it's 99.
That makes more sense. Right. Torah.
Well, I feel a little better because
Yeah.
I was
Seriously.
I was feeling really inadequate.
That's amazing. All right, but even 99 is pretty good.
Yeah,
I have another question.
All right.
This is from page 102. When you have a plural noun that ends in the feminine ending vav and tav, is the first if it's the first word of a word pair, there's no changes? From page 102.
Oh, you mean like the last one there, Shem HaChagim?
Yeah.
Remote. There are there's no change as regards the ending. There's no change.
Well, there is if there's a mem.
Oh no, but you were asking about the oat, right?
Right. So there's no change.
Right. The oat ending doesn't change. Sometimes there'll be a change. Sometimes there might be a change in the vowels, but as regards the ending, no change.
So there's no changes.
Exactly. So right. So if you look at the one below, right, B'nai Yitzchak, right, as opposed to Banim, you get B'nai, right? But Benot Yitzchak is the same as just general daughters.
So there's no change if it's a vav and a tav.
Exactly.
Okay. Could you pronounce the words on page 98?
Sure. Oh, excuse me. Ish and Anashim, right? And Anashim, can also mean just people, plural.
Ish, and what is the other one?
Anashim. Yad and Yadayim. Now, the reason it's Yadayim as opposed to like Yadim is because that's what's called the dual. So the dual number means there's 2. So singular is Yad, the dual is Yadayim, and in Hebrew, generally where there's a dual, the dual also becomes the plural. Yaakov, Yitzchak, my Hebrew name, Yitzchak.
What is Isaac?
Yeah.
What is it again?
Yitzchak, Kol and Kol. All right, these are the same word. Kol with a holam, the dot like that, is when it's on its own. Kol with the little kamatz there. The second version is when it's in a word pair. So in the Reform movement, we say that God michye hakol, right? That God brings life to everything. But when we say that is hakol is with the first spelling. When we say kol ha'olam, the entire world, right? That's a word pair, so we have the second one. Lama'an. Lama'an is for the sake of. Lama'an shemo, for the sake of God's name. Panim is face, for whatever.
What is face?
Panim. For whatever reason, panim is a plural noun. So Moses was the only person that was able to talk to God panim el panim, able to speak to God face to face. And it's a very familiar Yiddish word, punim, shena punim, had a beautiful face, shena punim. Okay, so Rasha, Risha'ah, Risha'im, and Risha'ot. So you could say wicked or evil. Sometimes it does mean that. Sometimes it just means, in my opinion, just means slightly complicated. And then Shemayim is also technically a dual, but it's a plural.
And on page 97, how do you say wine?
Yayin.
Yaim?
Yayin. Yayin. It's two yuz. Yayin.
And also a scam?
What?
In Hebrew, also a scam?
Scam.
G-A-M, how do you pronounce
Gam.
also?
Gam.
Gam.
Gam. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have to go now. Thank you. I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ellen. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, I'll see you tonight at 6 on Zoom.
Perfect. 6, 6 is fine. Great. So, Heba, how's everything going?
Everything is going well.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any questions you have? Any concerns?
I have concerns, but nothing that I can't work
Yeah.
work through. I missed, Rachel and I both missed a class, but last week she gave me the fourth Aliyah that I'll be doing.
Great.
So, and we went over it.
Good.
And I've been practicing it on my own.
Great.
So, I've done Aliyahs before.
Okay.
So I know the,
You know the brachas.
I know the dance.
Great.
You know.
Good. That's right. That we'll go over it, in the rehearsal just to make sure that everyone,
Are you going to, there's the prayer before the Aliyah, before you say the Aliyah. I have always had the available to me, the transliteration.
Yep, that'll be there.
Okay. Because I didn't know if I had to learn that as well.
No, I mean, it's a good thing to know. It's a good thing to learn, but you've got probably enough on your plate right now to sort of focus on just the.
Well, I know a little bit better how to pronounce things now that, I would use the transliteration, but in my previous shul, but yeah, we barely had a minyan every week.
Right.
So,
everyone had to do the Aliyah.
Everyone had an Aliyah because we did 7 Aliyahs.
Right. And we'll probably do 7 Aliyahs. We'll have to figure that out. Maybe we'll do fewer, and I'll just read the portions that no one else is reading. Maybe Sherry will take an Aliyah. Maybe Rachel will take an Aliyah. We'll see.
So that I think that that I'm a convert as well.
Oh, I don't know if I did know that. That's great.
Yes, my father was Jewish.
Oh, okay.
But my mother was not.
Got it.
My mother was a Protestant, and that's why I studied many different religions to figure it out.
Right. Exactly.
And one of the challenges that I have is that I do not know my father's Hebrew name. He passed away before I was able.
Right. What was his English name?
In English, it was Alberto Juan. because it wasn't English, it's Spanish.
Right. So,
My-
so how
my-
do you get called to the Torah?
I'm sorry?
How do you get called to the Torah?
Well, I do it through the conversion.
Oh, okay. Right, because some people, when they convert, if they have a Jewish father, sometimes
Which I do.
sometimes
Well, of blessed memory.
right. Well, but if the father was Jewish, right, then they sometimes will use his name, right, without.
But I don't know his Hebrew name.
So and I really like being Avraham B'Sarah. I just find that it's very powerful to me to be reminded, right, that I'm coming from this you know, that I'm along with all the other people that Sarah and Abraham converted, you know.
Right. Right. No, it's an honor. I wish I had known my father's Hebrew name.
That would have been amazing to know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I put out to some cousins,
Right.
to see if because they all immigrated from the Canary Islands during the Spanish.
Right.
So my father was, yeah, and you'll appreciate this. When my mother was introducing my father to her family, they pulled her aside and they said, "A Jewish Puerto Rican?" Like, you know,
it was very funny. It was very funny. I was in college in the late 80s, you know, which was the height of political correctness, right? And I remember there was a talk by someone, and it said, you know, come hear this talk by this woman, blah blah blah, whatever her name was. She's a Jewish, Puerto Rican, lesbian, and then there was one other identity marker, and it was we hit the holy grail. We've got it all.
I know it.
So crazy.
So okay, so any other Jewish or pardon me, any other logistical questions?
Not. I mean, at this point, no. I think, you know, I'll send out that note to everyone asking them, you know, for all the material that, you know, you're comfortable sharing, and you know, I'm still hoping that, you know, that if people aren't coming in person, that we can open I would really like for Stephen to be able to be there, Lori's husband. They really do everything together. So I would love for him to be able to be there. I would love for everyone to have the chance to have one loved one there, but I'm just.
My sister lives in the building.
Then
in my building.
And she can just come.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Are we providing food? Are we doing a kiddush afterwards?
Yeah, that actually is a great question. We definitely will have some sort of a celebration, but we should. I think the next time that we're together as a group, I think we should talk about, do we want that to be something that, you know, that's potluck? Do we want that to be something that, you know, we
assign
various things to buy, or do we just, you know, have it, you know, I'll send my kid to the butchery.
Yeah, well, because now you have questions of you know, parv and, you know, the whole kosher question.
Everything will be parv or dairy.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be kosher, but that's the ruling of the minyan, of the worship and study minyan, is everything has to be dairy or parv, and we don't worry about people's kashrut in their houses.
Right. Okay. That presents a little bit of a challenge for me because I am somewhat lactose intolerant.
Right. So what we'll do is we'll make sure that there are. We always make a point at the minyan, and we'll have to do that here, right? Of making sure that there are gluten-free and lactose-free alternatives.
Yeah. Well, I make a really good egg salad, because I make my own mayonnaise.
Oh, great. Oh, good.
And it's yeah, so it's really
phenomenal. That's great. So, you know, I'm happy to have it be that way. I have to check with the bosses and make sure that it's kosher for us to bring to have people bring their own food. You know, this is just an unknown.
Right, right.
Everything unknown.
Is this the first time that this is being done?
It's the first time it's being done by me. A number of years ago, you can ask Gail. One of my predecessors did a bar bat mitzvah with the people then, and it, you know, so they've been, you know, Gail in particular has been wanting me to do a bar bat mitzvah thing for a long time. So, and I think I'm going to probably do it again, not the very distant future, because I think there are probably some people that didn't do it because it was on Zoom who might do it if it were in person. So,
Right.
But that makes it more complicated because it's going to have to, like, this has been amazing because we've got all 3 buildings plus firemen plus 4 people from the Worship and Study Minion. So it's like been this amazing opportunity to bring this community together.
Diverse group of people together.
And we would never have this diverse group if we hadn't had it on Zoom. So it's going to
I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Right, exactly.
Because I was working this morning. So, yeah, sometimes when I don't show up for the classes has been because I've had work.
Right. Well, luckily everything is on the YouTube, so it's not a problem.
I know I've been able to review.
Yeah.
I've been able to review.